Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this ongoing podcast series on the partnership with Talking Leadership and Best Practice Network. My name is Kevin Bennett. I'm the facilitator for New South Wales and Queensland, and pleased to be the co-host on this podcast series. I'm joined by Eric Perez. How are you, Eric?
I'm well, mate. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. We've got three fantastic guests today. They're going to be talking about sustainability and leadership and how this is progressing through each of our individual businesses. So before we make into the first comments and discussions, I'd like to get the three of them to introduce themselves. So hello, Rachel. How are you?
Oh, hi, Kevin. Yeah, my name's Rachel Baigent. I'm the managing director of a company called Miltech Recycling and Environmental Solutions here in Queensland, and we have the business in Queensland and Northern Territory, and we bring innovation in recycling and waste management from Europe. It's been our pleasure. It's a great thing to be in this discussion today, Kevin, because sustainability and the environment is everything we're about. And, we've been in this business for 17 years. And the interesting thing is this last 12 months has changed everything for us. And it's become the most, like, all my staff, myself, we are basically running to work every day because the positive side of the environment and sustainability is here. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think you'll have some interesting insights if you're working with other businesses as well. So great. Charlotte, introduce yourself, please.
Oh, yes. So I'm Charlotte Jennings. I'm part of the graduate program at the Winston Group, and I'm working as a sustainability projects and packaging officer. My main focus is around reducing our packaging and reaching those APCO targets that we've signed on for, and particularly in this new industry where there's a strong drive for a high recycled content and reduced plastic and making sure that everything is recyclable. I'm a bit new to the sustainability front, but I'm learning everything I can, and there's so much information out there, so it's great to be here.
Fantastic. And I think we're really interested in your insights as being part of that graduate program, which I know is a fantastic graduate program as part of Winston Group, and you're one of the emerging leaders. So I'm really interested to see your confidence and what you can contribute to this discussion. Now, no stranger to these podcast series, Neil.
Hi, my name is Neil Cordon. I'm the Supply Chain Manager and Quality Systems Manager at GroundPro. I have a background in quality management in automotive in the UK and in Australia, and I've held roles in continuous improvement and safety. My roles have been very broad. I've covered reliability, technical support, and I've been looking after the supply chain and quality systems for the last 5 years. GroundPro is the world's leading technology company supplying slope stability radars and laser equipment to the mining and civil sector. And we were 20 years old last month, having been founded out of a PhD project out of the University of Queensland. And we're now sending our products to 34 countries. And sustainability is my core belief at the moment. It's for the last 2 years, it's been my sort of passion, self-appointed sustainability leader within the business, and now responsible for helping the business implement its ESG policy.
Fantastic, Neil. And I know you presented on an excellent sustainable supply chain forum recently as well, which was a lot of great takeaways. So, Rachel, I know you within your own business, but you obviously engage with a lot of external businesses. So describe the last 12 to 18 months in terms of how businesses have engaged and the sort of conversations you're having around the sustainability and the environment.
Okay, well, it's certainly in a very positive way, which is a great start. So we get called into businesses every day who want us to come in and evaluate all the different opportunities that they have to improve their environmental footprint and look at all of the recycling options that they have. And this is an ever-growing area, very, very exciting. Technologies are coming into Australia for efficient recycling. And also, it comes down to also analysing, we do analysis through their businesses of how they actually, as their products come into their systems, what waste they generate, things such as time, all the different waste that are associated, right through to how they can reduce that footprint of that product going out and where is it actually going to go. So a business that we are working with currently is banana farms, for example, up in North Queensland. They've been landfilling all that beautiful plastic and burning it. We now have a fantastic opportunity to bale that product on site and have that brought back, shredded, washed, and recycled back into plastic pellets so that they can be reused. And that's the thinking. They're changing their thinking and looking for processes within their buildings, but also how they're going to, where that product is going and how it's going to be used in Australia. And innovation. Innovation's a big one they're asking for. The old ways of dealing with their sustainability projects are completely being revamped now. So it's very engaging. And, as we have like with Charlotte, wonderful people like Charlotte in these organisations, we're bringing all different views into how we analyse our impact on the environment. It's fantastic.
No, I think I agree with you, Rachel. And I think there's definitely, having visited a number of businesses the last few weeks, the last couple of months, there's the whole openness to discuss it now, and also be quite innovative. The traditional of just recycle it, put it in a bin is moved on now. We've got to get better at doing that. But it is about how can I make value from it as well, in terms of turning it into products that are of use.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that's in basically every discussion we have now, is that in their P&L, I expect in the future, if not now, that there's a line from each of these products that they're recycling that's an income stream that, when we've got people in the business doing sorting and segregation so that we get very good quality recyclable product, that there's a value in this. And there most definitely is. Plastic's made from oil. Oil is a finite product, and plastic is not the enemy. It's it going to landfill is their problem, or into our waterways. Now, if we reuse it, it is a beautiful product. So
it's a great analogy, Rachel, and I think that's some of the positiveness that and this is why we want to discuss this about how do businesses, how do we get our leadership to start all thinking that way and thinking about it as being an upside. We were talking with a couple of members the other week, and they now see the sustainable decarbonization supply chain as business opportunities, where before it used to be a business threat. And I think very much, Neil, I know in terms of Ground Probe, that's I know you've been, a big passion around this area, but I think it is something that's been through the DNA now of we can make some really good impacts here and have some great positive outcomes. And you're seeing that as senior team as well, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a business opportunity in many respects. I mean, financially, it makes good sense as well. I mean, whatever you do in this sphere, there's always a payback somewhere. There's payback to the planet, obviously, which is the main sort of objective, but there's also financial payback, and there's reputational payback as well. I mean, when people see that you're doing the right thing, they want to partner with you, they want to be, they want to do business with you. Whether it be we're just installing solar panels on the roof of this building, a 100 kilowatt system, we're going to help reduce our carbon footprint. That's a direct action that we're taking as a business that's going to have a direct financial payback. But we're going to market that as well, because, we want people to know that we have got this sustainability belief in our DNA, and you can monetize it if you want to. And as you say, there's then actually the material content stuff as well, is actually using recycled material content is cheaper than it is than buying the fresh stuff.
Yeah.
So that everywhere you look on this, there's a win.
Exactly right. And I think it's I'll come to you now, Charlotte, but I think we had a forum on electric vehicles this week, and the studies were saying that it's going to slowly become a contractual requirement to be doing these type of things, and could almost be a ticket to do business. I think it's something we've got to come with. So Charlotte, I know there's a lot been going on. So what's the sort of things that Winston Group are doing? And I know what are you as Winston Group seeing out in the marketplace?
Well, I think the biggest driver at the moment is our waste, our on-site waste that we generate. Like Rachel said, we are looking for those different avenues to try and generate an income from this waste that we used to send to landfill. I know over the last year, we reduced like 150 tonne just by finding other options, send it to e-waste, get a steel skip, recycle our plastic so that we can actually save it from landfill. But there's also a strong demand in the market for that recycled content. So customers are asking for pallet wrap that is made of recycled content, and the struggle is because we haven't really found that avenues, or no one's really pushing those avenues at the moment. It's hard to find that recycled content to meet the need of the market. I think also another driver we found is compostability. There's a lot of green talk about compostability and the cost of compostability, and that may force leadership to want to, it affects the bottom line, but it has such a sustainable drive. We really are at that turning point where are the costs worth that sustainable buy off and that marketing opportunity that you can get.
And what are you seeing in terms of, obviously, I know a fair number of the senior team there. So what are you seeing at a leadership level? Because obviously there's internal benefits and external benefits. So what's the sort of conversations and how is that being promoted to you as an organization?
In the last year, there's been so much change and it's all been driven by our top level leadership. Just as a graduate, I know where everyone stands on how much they want to see change. I mean, we went from struggling to take away those polystyrene cups, now encouraging the bring your own cup. And that was all driven from top management. They're also very open on how they perceive the benefits, not only financially, but the environmental benefits on all the changes we are making. And I think it's really driven by that communication and that leading the way.
Fantastic. So coming back to you, Rachel, here, and again, I want to focus on the leadership discussions, because as we know, a lot of this case, if our leadership isn't talking about it, communicating and motivating. So what's the sort of discussions that you're having? When you're talking to organizations, I'm sure you've come across the ones that just see what you offer as a pure cost. There's no in terms of what we're doing. So I'm trying to explore what's the sort of conversations when you're having with business leaders when they come to you to say, Rachel, I want to do this.
Well, initially what we do is we ask what are their issues. So what are the issues that they have regarding their sustainability targets? What is it that they're trying to improve in their waste management and recycling? And out of those issues, we find, the paths that they go down to. And, obviously cardboard and soft plastics are easy, no brainer. The old days of sending that stuff loose in skips, they're over. So bailing, we very quickly find out whether it's a financial benefit to them very quickly. And that's an easy one. Then we start looking, and that's where we engage them with things like waste value mapping, where we will actually engage their team and management to go, well, where do you see the efficiencies that we can improve? And that can often start from as the products are coming into their businesses. And so, a walk around I did recently where we discovered that there were 5 different products coming into the warehouse, into the distribution centre, that we could immediately change to a recyclable product going out the end of that distribution centre and actually create a value out of that product, whereas they were being charged. So immediately, just in usually like it's a 20-minute, half an hour conversation and a walk around, and often we'll make tens of thousands of dollars difference. It's just it's a lot of it's hands-on. It's walking around and engaging the team. And I think that management, we've got so many people coming into these organizations that are very keen on being environmentally responsible. They engage their teams. But obviously the bottom line is they want to see it in their P&L, and that's where we show them it is in there. They will see the benefit coming in.
Yeah, and I think that really picks up on some of the discussion we had before about how we change the conversation, how we convert the conversation. And I think Charlotte just put notes there is about it's very easy to fall in the negative side of this, which I know where we've been with plastic and cardboard. And Neil, do you want to just share that conversation that you had a couple of years ago and how that's turned around?
Yeah, just when we're talking about, getting value for plastics and things like that, Charlotte just mentioned that as well. And a couple of years ago, well, maybe just over 2 years ago, we were looking to try and find a way of disposing of a lot of our soft plastics. And we had a lot of, that packaging kind of material. And, we couldn't find anywhere other than the bin down at Coles, the red cycle bin. It's like there's no way you could turn up with a ute full of plastic and try and cram it into the red cycle bin in Coles. And so, we've phoned around a few waste companies, the people that we've got contracts with, no idea. Phoned our local MP and said, what the hell are we supposed to do with this stuff? We're a small local business. Everyone around us must be in the same boat. And he said, I've got nothing to offer you right now. We're working on the infrastructure, but in 2 years' time, people will pay you for this stuff. And he was bang on. Now we're 2 years on and people are, gimme. We want this stuff. It's good. It's cheaper material for them to manufacture stuff. And I'm like, at the time I thought, as if people are going to pay you for waste plastic. And here we are,
No, exactly right. And I think it's really interesting. I keep coming back to this whole point of now seeing value and opportunities. And I think we've spoken about this in having a positive mindset, Eric, and it's having this growth mindset. And I think that's coming around from a leadership point of view. So, Eric, do you want to just build on that? Because I think it's a common theme I know speaking to David Stewart about having this growth and positive mindset and seeing opportunities.
Yeah, definitely in the previous sets of discussions, and what I'm hearing with the discussion now is that take away the politics of sustainability, because depending on the industry, the politics of this gets very, very murky. So from a bit solely a business perspective, I think the narrative that there are ways to potentially generate passive income or contribute to better environmental outcomes, if there is a way to create the business case for businesses, I think that will get them in. And I think Rachel talked about it before, that you can fix a process and potentially save tens of thousands of dollars. And if your bottom line is important to you, then that kind of approach is important. All I can say in terms of where you go with sustainability, I think there are differences in some industries. If you have a growth mindset, you'll try and find solutions to difficult problems. And if we take it back to the leadership discussion, I think more effective leaders will try and find what is the opportunity rather than why can't we do something, if that makes sense.
Yep, no, it does. And I think I want to just build on something there, which is now about emerging leadership and new employees. So how much do you think as a group, and I'll come to each of you, that, when a potential employee is looking at a business now, how much do you think the messaging and the actions around sustainability and environment now form part of their decision? Because one of the message we're getting in is it's becoming more and more, I'd be interested in Charlotte, because you're new in the graduate, but it's becoming more and more two-way process now, is the fact you've got to interview for a job, but you're also interviewing the employer to be, how about we do it? So how much do you think this sustainability and environment, because I think it's a watch out for leadership, they've got to be aware it's on the way. So Charlotte, how much do you think is part of the way that leaders and businesses message themselves? How important is that now for new employees?
I'd say it's one of the biggest drivers, especially for recent graduates out of university. I know when I was in university, sustainability was a topic you spoke about in every single unit. It became such a big driver. And then once you've reached that point, we're living in a climate where every time you open the news, there's always a dire climate change issue or a dire pollution issue. So you, as looking for a job, you want that driven and advertised proof that who you're working for is making a change, and you're making a difference. If you do sign up or join this role, you can prove that I feel good being in this company because they have sustainability policies. They have a volunteer day where you go pick up rubbish for Clean Up Australia. I feel like I'm making a difference by signing on.
Great, Charlotte. So Neil, and I know you've been trying to recruit people, so how much is it coming up in the conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really pleased to hear you say that, Charlotte, because that's definitely the way that we would hope that we're viewed as well, is that people would be looking on LinkedIn and they would be seeing that stuff. And I said, you can market that, but it's also something that in the interviews we start with that. We start with explaining the company's philosophy and the view, what we're here for, what our purpose is, and that kind of thing. So we set the scene, and you can see the way the interviewees respond to that. They already think, I want to work here, before they even get into the nitty-gritty of what the job might want to be, because people do want to make a difference. And I think, the younger they are, the more significant a decision it is for them, because the more they're going to feel the consequence. I think, it's a massive thing, and we're actually leading with that. That's kind of our first cab off the rank when we're talking to new potential employees.
Rachel, any thoughts or comments on what you're seeing or hearing?
Most definitely, because obviously it's an investment both ways. The business is investing in these wonderful new employees, regardless of whether they're young or old or where they've come from. And you're hoping, say, for a 5-year investment in that person, and they are likewise looking to see what your business is going to achieve, so that they are feeling good, because it's all about the environment that people work in. And if they, as Neil was saying, it's the environment of the business that you're moving into and the investment that you put into that business, it's a huge difference at the moment, Kevin. I believe wholeheartedly that it is one of the major factors of why people are choosing the roles today.
So with that in mind, and I think it has come around in our emerging leaders discussion about this two-way interview process. So do we feel businesses are currently making enough of this? And is there, without giving away names, but is there any examples that you've seen out there that would really attract you? Some examples of things you've seen that you may think, wow, that's almost something that we want to aspire to. So do we think businesses are doing enough at the minute in terms of promoting this message? Who wants to go first?
I think they could do more. Again, though, that is based on their figures today. So, a successful organisation is going to be very proud to promote those figures. I went into a multinational company yesterday, and their figures were terrible, so they're not going to promote those. But, however, they are changing their policies to embrace it.
Yeah. So Charlotte, is there any businesses out there that you aspire to or see that are really leading the way in terms of this thinking?
I think it's the big multinationals. As a small to medium business, obviously we can't reach those levels with what investments we have, but it's those big multinationals that are making the commitment, the net zeros and the reducing all our plastic by this date. That's a real driver because you see it advertised and you see that, I'm contributing to that. But again, big multinationals and the small to medium Australian business are very different. So it's kind of like finding that middle ground where you don't have the resources to reach those targets just yet, but you're trying to make the steps and you're showing that you're making those steps.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. And again, we've spoken about this a number of times about the role of leadership, and it means different things at different levels. And I want to pick up on something Rachel just said about sometimes it can just be really simple, easy stuff. So turning lights on, turning lights off, or converting something, or it's just so. Rachel, I think you mentioned that point, and I think sometimes we can overcomplicate these things and think it's got to be, we want to, in terms of a planet, have an impact, but sometimes we've got to start small. Is that the sort of things you're discussing, Rachel, with businesses?
Yeah, I think, definitely. And it's like the Kaizen Principle, continuous improvement. Small steps make huge steps. You look at small change in a business, and I've been in many businesses myself over the years where when we've sat down and we've taken a day and we've gone through our whole business or our whole manufacturing plant, and each person in every area identifies the issues that they have, and then those improvements are put together. And it can be as simple. And I remember once in a computer company that I worked in for a number of years, where we built thousands of computers. We actually spent a day and looked at everybody's workstations as the computers flowed through the business. In that single day, we made massive changes with very little cost to the business, apart from the time taken of those employees. And the following week, with the change, like we were allowed to move simple things like all our furniture around our workstations, and all of the in the workshops, we could move things. We did that. The following week, the improvement was enormous, very, very little cost. And it's the same with going into an organisation and going, just sit down for a minute and have a look at how things flow through your business or what's coming into your business. Quite quickly, you can make very good changes without a great deal of money involved. And that's how you get that culture. And I believe the culture's here now. We've got to stop being negative about recycling and sustainability. Everybody is getting on board. Now we show people the positive things, and there's so much going on. That's what we need to publicise. Yeah, as I say, in businesses, whether you're small or large, you can make quite quick improvements that aren't.
Yeah, and I do want to pick up on, and we just had a recent visit to Neil and his team. So Neil, I know you've done a lot of working with the teams on their culture and getting their engagement, and then the ideas start to come. I know that's been a big part of the ground probe and your strategy.
Yeah, that's just what Rachel was saying there. We started a couple of years ago to integrate the sustainability stream of ideas into our continuous improvement program, which involves people submitting cards and things like that. And it started with lots and lots of very small ideas, which made a big impact collectively. But we also started doing some education sessions. There was a lot of misinformation flowing on Facebook and social media, and so we've started a lunch and learn campaign where we've got people to just come in at lunchtime and sit and chat about these things. And I started presenting some progress, some of the really amazing things that are going on in industry and the world, and innovation and technology in the space that we live in GroundPro. And that's been going for 2 years now, and it's had a major impact, and spreading that across the business, going out to further into the business with that message, but also coupling that with the ability for them to then contribute and actually make suggestions about small step changes that we can make. And there's been some really big changes as well, but most of them are just discrete changes at the point of action, where someone's just thinking slightly differently about what they're buying or how they're disposing of something, and that collectively adds up to a cultural mindset for the business, which drives massive change.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on something that Charlotte said as well, which is about, and you mentioned about, when you listen to a business about, do they do a volunteers day or do they connect with a clean Australia day? Because I think we've always found, working across the network, some improvement. If people can take an idea and engage with it on a personal level, but then on a family, community level and work level, it just seems to mean more, in terms of, working with schools that collect tops that get converted into artificial limbs, or, the good old 10 cents recycling. I was at the local one again last weekend, and it was cute. And I reckon, 60% was kids and families who've been out collecting, was recycling, and almost dragging the parents along. It was almost going, we're going to do this because the way we want to go. So go back to you, Charlotte, in terms of, I think we've got to start looking. Yes, there's a business element here, but there's also a community and personal engagement that we can draw on as well. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all dealing with the environmental impacts of what we've done in the past, and that includes all our children, all our grandchildren, and we really want to improve it. So any way that you can engage other people in the business and make sure that they also are on the same level, and then making changes with you as a business and also as a team, and building that culture will definitely encourage that education program, that push to be more sustainable, not only on a personal level but on a business level. You need that. It's all about culture. You need that switch on culture. You can make sure that leaders are showing that their families are involved, everyone's involved together, and us as a human race, or us as Australia, are making these changes not just for the financial benefits of a business.
Which I suppose comes back, Eric, here, and again, it keeps coming back about the ability to communicate, support, allow your teams to develop, allow your teams to experiment, because that's what drives innovation. Is I think we're going to find this as we go to different topics. These common themes are going to keep coming back here. Anything that, Eric, just as we're around these discussion points?
Yeah, I think whatever the organization is, the size of the organization, if you don't see your senior leaders invested in what you're doing, or they're not connected and it seems to be tokenistic, then people will not connect. So there has to be genuine buy-in from the people that run the joint. If you don't feel that they're walking the walk and talking the talk, then that disconnect will make you think twice. And I've known of some people that have foregone job opportunities because they don't think their values line up. How do you align values in an organization? And I think any leader that doesn't understand what those look like and what they drive is not going to be as effective as they otherwise might be. There is a darker side to that there could be people, and I never want to make assumptions here, but a lot of times people that work in some organizations, it's a very functional thing. They go to work, they do a 9 to 5 and they go home. They're not at work to be more sustainable. They're not at work to help with the progress of the business beyond their bit of it. So is there a chance that you will alienate some people in your business that are good at what they do? I don't know, but what I'm trying to say here is that for those that don't necessarily align straight away and aren't taken for the journey, it seems to me that there's an opportunity for these people to be marginalized in the business. Well, why aren't you greener? Why aren't you like the rest of us? I would suggest, and I think Rachel's brought this up, or I think it's implied this, that you bring people along, and if people don't want to come along, okay, is that all right? And if it's not, that needs to be made very clear by those in the know. So that level of cognitive dissonance between what you're hearing, what you're seeing in your own values, that stuff is going to become more important. And it's the stuff of leadership that is the most difficult to engage with it from my perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it really starts to tie together on the point. So Rachel, I just want to come back to Miltech here. So are you having to explain, I suppose, about what Miltech really is? Because it's very easy to pigeon into, you just take cardboard, put it on a pallet and put a strap around it for me. Has that changed? Is that changing, or are you having to get people to really think about what it is more about?
It's very interesting because what the engagement is now, when we first started, all we were doing was putting in cardboard balers. So 17 years ago, that's all we did. We put in machines all around the place, they baled cardboard. We changed the thinking on cardboard from loose bins. And then suddenly this terrible thing called plastic popped up, and suddenly that thing gained value. So then we had a product that if it was baled, it was that whole Wally effect. We would provide the bales and the recyclers would start calling us, which is what's happening enormously now, is they want those beautiful bales. And then part of that sustainability thing is the clients is now saying, well, where do those bales go? That's a very big part of our new work. And what other products can you help us with? So our company is focused on providing the technology to recycle as much as possible of all the different wastes that people create in businesses. And they are asking us to help them, because it's very hard for a business to find out who the best recycler is in Brisbane or say Townsville. Now that's part of one thing, a big part of our growing business is we are connecting this lovely network of ethical recyclers here in Australia who are going to get that material turned back into, i.e. plastic beads or paper products, but plastic beads are a big one. We import that, millions of tons of that stuff from overseas. Let's stop that and use the plastic that we've got here. And that, and people want to do that. And so if we are using our own plastic, that's a phenomenal thing moving forward. And you can see how our business changed. All we would do was dump a baler into the site, teach them how to use it beautifully, and off we'd merrily go. Now, a huge part of our company is involved in recycling. Where does that product go? Make sure the collections happen on time. And we work with our recycling teams and our waste management companies, who are our wonderful transport mechanism for this product. So we're all working together, and that's where again, and I always try and be positive. This is the positive approach to it, is the waste companies are our recycling companies. They have the trucks already. They are ready to go. So what we're asking the businesses is, well, can you provide the product in a form that our recyclers can now use? So, we've introduced wonderful new sorting technique. It's called Infinity. So we have bag stands and bag stands that we can mount on walls or freestanding, and we have continuous cartridges that make it very easy to load large quantities of products or small, and we can color code them. So say you go into a food manufacturer, you can't have clear plastic inside the food production, because if it gets in, they can't see it. So now we have everybody wanting different colored bags, not a problem. And that plastic is recyclable. So these things, plastic isn't the enemy, you see. Yep. And our whole change when we go into a site is trying to ascertain all the positive things that they can do quite quickly. And yes, you're right. And I'm sorry, it's a long-winded way, but a complete change in our business now. It's all about where does that product go, and efficiencies within those business, and quick results that are cost effective. So
yeah, I think it's a great example, because I think it fits in with something that Neil had, we called it like the closed loops. It's almost about where it's going, but it's just as much about where it's coming from. But that could actually be a waste from where it's from what's happened before. So this closed loop is coming in. It becomes what you're using now could have actually come out as a waistline in your factory 6 months ago. Understanding where so it's just as much about what do I do with it at the end, but it's just then about where is it actually coming from. And I want to go back to a point, Neil, that you picked up before, because I think it goes back to when we're designing our products, when we're designing our processes, and even back to come to Charlotte and what Winston Group do. We've got to be acutely aware now of that impact when we decide to do something. Sounds great, but when we then got to bring it in and then look to use it afterwards, we've really got to think about the total life of something now. So, and I think, Neil, that's definitely something you and the team at GroundPro are looking at, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just going back one step to the thing about leadership, I think, part of the leadership role is to put the connective tissue in place between the policies and the objectives, the key objectives that the business needs to drive sustainability. And one of ours has definitely been around product design. Is that for many reasons, our product has a diesel engine embedded in it. Some of our products have diesel engines embedded in them. Obviously, that's not great for the environment. So we need to design that out. But in designing that out, we also need to consider the use of the materials and where they're coming from, sustainable supply chain to get them in. So it's a very broad approach to it. And then when you've got the product, you want to make sure that at the end of its life, which could be between 8 and 12 years out from when we ship it, that it can be broken down into its component parts by design, and then those parts can be fed back into the various recycling streams. That was never a part of the mindset before. It was never designed in. So we have to design our product for the life cycle of the product to be fed back into the circular economy again. But we also have to design a product that's minimum impact in its use. So it's a radical rethink from the design to the supply chain to the manufacture to the use of the product to the end of its life. So it's an entire life cycle management rethink.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So Charlotte, coming back to where you are and in terms of with Winston Group, so your sustainability role. So are you, obviously there's your own internal sustainability, but is there a view at looking at where materials are coming from and then ultimately what your customers then do with it as well? How's that coming in as part of the conversation?
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously, everyone's looking for sustainability in the e-commerce industry. Is in particular, you want compostable mailers. You want to be able to advertise that you're making a change as a small e-commerce business. So there's been that drive. I think also our focus at the Winston Group is how we package our products to send it out. Because not only is our product, we need to think about how our products impact the environment, but how we are sending them out and how that packaging is impacting the environment. Because our end consumer will have to throw that packaging out, and we need to make sure that that packaging that is not sent to landfill, you can recycle the cardboard box that came in. The label that's on that cardboard box is easily recycled. Our big drive at the moment is to reduce that unnecessary packaging, strapping that's around a box. Do you really need it? Is it just going to go straight to landfill and it's not necessary for the safety of the product? That's our big driver at the moment, is making sure that it's our responsibility to make sure that our packaging is reduced to the minimal level that is needed, and our consumers and our market doesn't have to dispose of unnecessary packaging.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, we're building on this point of is exposing our, the days have gone where we just had to think about our own business here. We've got to start thinking about suppliers, which is back to employees as well, as we've said before. But there's also about what then happens with our products and services afterwards. And again, how we can make value of those. And, I met up with a couple of companies this week, and there was one gentleman then saying that he deals with tires, large tires, so the big mining tires. And they're looking in terms of how they recycle tires and how they use them and things like that. And it wasn't until they started having open discussions that he suddenly realized there's actually another dozen people looking at the same problem, but they were just on their own thinking we can't make an impact. But now there's a whole potential supply chain of rubber that now someone can take and do something work back into roads. I've heard there's someone now who's turning it into insulation panels because rubber's good insulator. You can now turn it into wall products and, with thermal and heat. But the problem was, I'm going back to a statement that was on the chat earlier. If we see it as negative, our mindset is completely wrong with this now. It's seen as a dirty thing and we just got to hide it or move it or don't let anybody know that we've got it. Well, now it's about being aware of this is what we can do with it now and actually can create value. And all this energy has gone in this great product. And I think, Rachel, you said it before about plastic. I've worked with a number of plastic companies before, especially in the medical devices, where plastic is the perfect material for medical devices. But now we've got to work out how we use it and how we recycle it afterwards. And I think we are back to this, our leadership. And I'm not talking about our leadership right through the whole business now. And I love, what Neil was saying now, that, building it into the culture about getting people to say, well, why can't we do this with it? Or why does it have to come in 6 separate boxes? Or why do we have to, and where's that supply chain coming from? So opening up the discussion, and I think that's a real key role of the leadership here, is about we need to build the ideas and open up the value chains. And I think it's a critical element in terms of being agile and being reflective as well. So going back to Rachel here from this business, what are you seeing as are there any potential innovations or things on the horizon?
There's a lot coming, and sort of further to Charlotte's points about what companies are shipping out the door, and Winston Group do a fantastic job there. But and things like your PETs, the strapping that's going around all the pallets, you've got to be realistic about the weights of things and how we hold those pallets together. So again, the PET strapping is not the enemy. That product is actually quite valuable, or it can be, and there's technology to chip it up so that it's in a form that we can actually fully recycle. And it may be the only cost-effective way of getting those heavy pallets out to sites all around Australia. But again, there's definitely a path. There is down south, and there's coming to Queensland a path for that product. So then what you do is you say to your clients that are shipping it to you, can you please provide it in one color? So this is where we do these simple things. Polystyrene, again, I have technology that compacts it. I have a couple of machines that reduce it from 40 bins down to one or onto a pallet. And and polystyrene is going to become quite a valuable product in the future for combining with technology that's going to be used for recycling. So, again, polystyrene is another material that can be the most effective way. It's not the enemy if it's recycled, and there are pathways for recycling it today. It's just people aren't aware of them, I think, half of the time. Again, to what Charlotte was saying, changing that packaging, polystyrene beading is something that's now been changed. And I think Winsome Group does this. They have the puffed brown paper packaging that we use instead of that.
Yeah, most
did
definitely.
that, yes, it is. It's you, yeah. And that's amazing. We actually use that in Miltech. So all of our products coming from overseas and shipping around, we use that packaging. So that's a smart move. And of course, that product can be baled straight in with your cardboard boxes. You've changed a waste being an issue to something of value, because once you've baled it, then you've potentially got a value. So, there are so many simple ways. Pallet wrap, shrink wrap, which is again a big Winsome product, I'd imagine. Again, always consider the site that we went out to this morning. I'm looking at all this pallet wrap that's going to landfill, and I said to him, we need to put up some infinity stands around. I want you to capture all of that. And the thing is, and what people don't understand, and is that you can use your cardboard baler for your loose plastic. So you put your plastic aside in bags, and every now and then pop in the bags of plastic, and then you've got an efficient bale of product. And all of these are very simple things. You don't have to have 10 machines. You can have one cardboard machine that does plastic as well. So it's so much that can be done very, very, very simply. And, if we think of all the waste that are generated out of businesses, a lot of them are very simple waste that in our business we deal with. We're getting involved now in glass recycling. That's another one, Kevin, that's been such an issue. And well done to container refund scheme. So all the bottles that have a value, they go there. Well, what we're now doing is we're going to crush the other bottles, so all your wine and whiskey and all the other kind of fun bottles. We can crush those into an aggregate that can be used in roading. So it's not a bad thing. Glass it has such a long life as far as recycling. It's about presenting it in a way that our wonderful waste companies or recycling companies can lift it efficiently and effectively and get it to our recyclers. So, I'm just trying to think, there's so much technology coming. We've got machines, we can pack 44-gallon drums flat as a pancake. So, you can fill up a container with 4 times as much. It's about thinking about, smart ways of presenting, just as the Winsome Group's doing with their puff cardboard and their plastic pallet wrap that is highly desirable for recycling because it's clear plastic that we can recolor.
Yeah. And I think you're really building on the message here, Rachel, is about we've got to change in the mindset here. So this is about a growth mindset. It's about a positive mindset. It's about a value mindset, and asking the questions about what if we could do this, if I could crush all of these, or if we could save this, or if we didn't have to ship everything in, or if we could recycle, reuse, or could we go to returnable packaging, with our customer base, because the chances are someone's saying, I wish they would just take this back. And you just gotta bring the two together. And I think, I'm hearing some very strong messages which really go back to what we were saying before, positive mindsets, getting your team involved here, because the sustainability isn't just at this top leadership. We've said this before, is about if we want to create the right culture, want to create the right business, yes, this senior leadership is important, but we've got to get everyone involved and start to pick up and really talk about value. And especially with new people coming into the business, is actually listening to some of what they believe in and be willing to take that on board. So it could be a traditional business. I mean, Winston Group's a family business, been around for how many years now, Charlotte?
Just
It's
be
quite a few
60,
years.
60
Yeah, 60
maybe.
years. So it's very easy to fall into that traditional we know best, and about how do we create it into a positive, because there are a lot of sectors where it will become a part of a contract, as we say. Now, that's not the only driver. We should be doing it for the right reason. But I think sooner or later, there's some business out there going to say, well, unless you can show this or do this, you're just not going to get into the next level for business. And I think this is where us as leaders have really got to take this on board and take the team on the journey and actively listen to the team, because we as leaders may not be the right people to drive this. We can support it and say we'll open it up. We may not be the right people as leadership now as the ones who are going to make it happen. So I'm just going to go through now. And Eric, I'm just keen to get a bit of thoughts from you, but I really want we're into the last 5 minutes already of the podcast. So another great podcast. I really want some key messages from Rachel, from Neil and Charlotte. So if you were talking to business leaders, well, you are talking to business leaders now, because there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, listening to this one. What's your key messages to business leaders about making value of this? So while the team's thinking of that, Eric, any thoughts just to start to bring together this podcast?
Yeah, I don't think we're at a point of disagreement, Kevin, but I think any of this change, whether it's in the sustainability space or how you network or how your business does what it does in its sphere of influence, is about what are your values as a business and how do you connect those values to the people that you work with. And I think personally, any change or any adoption of different practices, and I think Rachel outlined it best, that needs to come from the people that run the joint. It can't just come from the employees, because if there's a disconnect between what your employees want and what you want, eventually if you're the business leader, you will win out because it's your business. So I think leaders need to be more engaged in this conversation. More broadly, I think the conversation is still quite a big one, because I can hear Rachel's enthusiasm for what she's doing. And I think more and more people are going to come online and look at their business inputs and processes, but I don't think everyone's quite there yet. So to make an assumption that we're all on the same trajectory, I think is dangerous. And whoever's going to lead a culture change now, any of you can correct me here, because I'm going into a territory that I have limited expertise in, but I've seen it. When you do culture change, I think it's small steps, and you bring people along with a narrative that gets you to an end point.
Okay, so Charlotte, come on, this is your opportunity. You're talking to the business leaders out there in Australia, New Zealand, and global, I reckon. Now, what would your message be to business leaders to get on board?
I think my message would be change is hard. We all know that making a change is hard, but if you are able to lead from the front with something that you're really passionate about, like sustainability, you are able to make that shift, that cultural shift that you need to get everyone on board. So you really want to lead from the front and take people on board with you on this sustainability journey.
Fantastic. Neil?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It's a massive subject, and I think most businesses are a long way behind where they need to be right now, and that means there's a lot of embedded things that need to change. So I think change management in terms of policy, finance, maybe even our business model, is that if you're not looking at this now, you really should be, and you should be looking at it holistically as a business, maybe even your product. You should be looking at opportunities and threats, because all those SWOT analyses that we do when we're doing our business and strategy plans, we need to go back to that again and make sure that our business is not going to be made irrelevant or become demonized because it's actually not doing the right thing. So I think if business leaders are listening to this, I would say if you're really not looking at this right now, you should be fully engaged in this. But also on the positive side, it's so exciting right now. There's so much going on. There's so many opportunities. There's money to be made. There's opportunities to be capitalized on, and there's the ability to do something that really matters, that's going to make a major difference. So get stuck in and do it.
Fantastic. Rachel?
Well, I would say that right now, I agree with everyone there. Right now is the most exciting time it's ever been for sustainability and recycling. And companies that are leading from the front, who are engaging their team, using the Kaizen continuous improvement principles, as Neil was saying, and my message would be you're not going to get everybody on board with every change you make in a business, but when you show the team those small wins that they can make that financially improve the business and improve their workplaces, and also you are creating the environment that they want to work in with a company that they can see is making a difference to their recycling environmental footprint.
Fantastic. All right, thank you, Rachel. So, as we always do on these podcasts, right near the end. So, what one takeaway from today's discussion? So, Neil, one takeaway from today's discussion.
I love the passion and the energy in this particular group, and I think that I'm hearing that everywhere I go. Is that the major takeaway for me is that this is a really exciting time, and there's a lot we can do that's positive.
Yep. Thank you, Charlotte.
Well, I think the biggest thing was always ask a question. What Rachel was saying about polystyrene, I always had this idea that polystyrene was horrific for the environment and we need to completely reduce it, get rid of it, never touch it again. But I guess you need to ask the questions if there is a more effective way or a better way to dispose of an item, and if you can get those income streams.
Thank you. Yeah, Rachel?
I think that, this is a wonderful collaboration, Kevin. I really appreciate the positiveness out of the group that we've had. I think that you've got a leadership team here who are on the right page, and the companies that we're all going to work with are going to succeed. I have no doubt.
Thank you. Eric?
I think for this one, Kevin, is the way you get some change is to build the business case for change. And I think there are opportunities here. And if people aren't motivated necessarily by one thing, they will be motivated by another. And you've got to find what motivates you to change. And so for me, it's finding that choke point that will get people to look at their systems. Because you got to realize maybe you've got to get to a point where a business will go, could I do something better? And sometimes you don't come to that realization unless you ask a question about what it is that you're doing and potentially could it be done better. And so, yeah, for me, it's build a business case and bring organizations and industries with you, whatever the topic area is, including sustainability. That would be my takeaway.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And I think for me, it's the real message about making it positive and keeping it positive. I think the other one is little things matter. Little things can make a really big difference. And I think it's everybody that's got to be involved, and everybody within the business, but upstream and downstream, and also the things about just how you can build that into community and families as well. So it's been a fantastic. I think we've talked about a great topic and a very relevant topic. We've also, I think, reinforced some of the leadership themes that we've also come across well in terms of, communication and how your leaders have an impact on the business. So it's been a great conversation today. So thank you to our co-presenters. So Rachel, thank you very much for today.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
And thank you, Charlotte.
It was amazing.
Great. And as always, Eric, thank you very much for supporting us on this journey. And we look forward to further Talking Leadership Best Practice Network podcasts.
Thanks for joining us again. That ends the Talking Leadership Best Practice Network set of podcasts. This is the 7th in the series for 2021. It goes without saying, I'd like to thank Neil, Rachel and Charlotte for their contributions to this podcast and previous guests that have helped to build the content around leadership. And of course, I'd like to thank Kevin Bennett, who is the Queensland and New South Wales Regional Facilitator for the Best Practice Network. More content on the way in 2022. So if you have ideas or issues you'd like us to consider for the 2022 set of podcasts, please get in touch with Kevin. His details will be in the podcast description as always. And from a Talking Leadership perspective, if there is a one-on-one discussion you'd like to have with me on either the audio or now the new video podcasting platforms under the Talking Leadership podcast series, please get in touch. I'll make my details available in the podcast description as well. Finally, and not least importantly, obviously, is to have a Merry Christmas and safe end of 2021. It's been another interesting and challenging year for businesses and leaders across Australia, let alone across the world. Have a safe break and an enjoyable new year. Thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next podcast series.